Doing the type of work I do means that I spend a lot of my time answering a lot of questions. I'm constantly answering questions from my one-on-one clients in emails and DMs, and definitely here on YouTube in the comment section. And without question, the number one question that I receive here on YouTube is, can you guess? You should be able to because it's in the title. That question is, can I do yoga during my period? Or some variation of that question. It might be something like, can I do this yoga sequence or this yoga pose during my period? But the underlying idea is that there are particular types of yoga or yoga poses that can or can't or should or shouldn't be practiced during the period. And so I have answered this question so many times, countless times in individual comments, and I decided, you know what, let me go ahead, put together a video where I share my thoughts and opinions on this topic once and for all. So that's what we're doing in this video. Before I share my thoughts and opinions and ideas and my answer, my ultimate answer to this question, I think it's really important that we take a closer look at the question itself and see what it might reveal to us, at least what I see when I read or receive this question. So let's dive in. This first part, can I? Can I, to me, suggest that you are making the person that you are posing this question to an authority figure in your life. You are seeking permission from this authority figure to do a particular thing. The second part of the question, do yoga during my period or its many variations. This part of the question reveals to me an idea, an underlying belief or assumption or presumption that there are particular things that are inherently and universally dangerous or detrimental to the female menstruating body. Now you have a very clear idea, or at least a pretty clear idea of how I'm looking at this question and what this question means to me. So I'm going to answer it finally by going through the different pieces of the question very similarly to how I broke down what the question means to me. So let's start with the first part. Can I? As I shared, can I to me suggests that someone is seeking permission from an authority figure. I don't see myself as an authority figure in anyone's life. So it's not really even a question I can answer because I don't believe I have the right to tell you what you can and cannot do with your body. I strongly believe in autonomy. So that alone makes this a really difficult question for me to answer. The second part of the question, do yoga during my period? So, as I said, this to me reveals an assumption about the female menstruating body that I do not hold. I do not hold the idea, and I do not subscribe to the idea that there are things that are universally or inherently dangerous or detrimental to the female body, and that particular yoga poses or yoga practices are dangerous to a menstruating body. You will often hear people say things like, you don't want to do anything too strenuous during your period because you're losing blood and you're using a lot of energy, or you have low energy, and that's why you don't want to do particular yoga practices or poses. The thing is that that's not universally true. Some people still feel full of energy during their period. Some people have lighter flows. You might be in a part of your period where your flow has lightened and your energy has returned if you were someone who sees a dip in your energy. And so we can't just say during the period you don't want to do, because everyone's period is different, because each part of the period is different. Each period in the same person can be different. So I don't believe that we can say these things should not be done because of how much energy someone may or may not have, or because of how much blood they may or may not be losing. There's just too much variance to say that this is always true for every person. Now, if you find that you don't have a ton of energy, then maybe you don't want to do a practice that requires a great deal of energy. Maybe you want to do something that feels more restorative or introspective or slow or nothing at all. But let it be because you're listening to your own body, not because you are being told by other people what is true for you. I've also come across things that suggest that doing inversions will reverse the downward flow of energy during the period. I do not personally hold that belief for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is because I don't believe that gravity itself is the only thing in charge of the flow of energy. And I think if we pause long enough to consider the fact that there are things that we do in our everyday life during our periods that don't completely stop our periods from happening, we'll see that perhaps it's not true during yoga either. Most of us will still reach down to pick things up during our period. Well, that's a standing forward fold. Most of us will still put on our shoes while standing or tie our shoes while standing. That's a standing forward fold. Many of us will lie down to sleep. Well, you're not exactly, head on top, hips on the bottom when you are lying down to sleep. You haven't stopped your period just because you're lying down. So when we pause and take a step away from this idea of the yoga poses doing a particular thing, and we see that we move in a lot of the ways that we're being told we shouldn't move during our periods, we see that we do move those ways. We do move those ways and nothing bad happens. So maybe there's a little misinformation that is influencing some of the things that we may or may not have been taught about our periods and yoga. And probably the thing that I've heard the most and the thing that seems to get people the most nervous about yoga during their period is this idea of causing a backflow of blood if they do like downward facing dog or a handstand or did I say handstand? If I said handstand, then handstand and headstand. You get the point. Some sort of an inversion, even a standing forward fold. And again, if we think about what I said just a moment ago, we do a lot of things where our hips are above our heart or our head in our everyday life. And no one's ever been like, oh, that's going to cause endometriosis if you tie your shoes. So why do we have this fear when we're practicing yoga? The other thing is that you're not going to stay in that pose for the entirety of your period. Eventually, you're going to come back up. So that's where I stand. These are the reasons why I tend to answer this question one of two ways in the comment section. That first way is I can't think of a reason you can't or shouldn't. Or the second way tends to be a little bit lengthier, and it sounds usually something like, I think that our bodies can benefit from a variety of movements throughout our menstrual cycle, including during our periods. I don't subscribe to the idea that there are particular yoga poses or practices that are universally detrimental to a menstruating body. I would encourage you to listen to your body and ask yourself if something feels good to your body, and if it does, consider practicing it, and if it doesn't, consider holding off on it until it feels good, or if it never feels good, simply don't do it. So that's usually how I answer those questions, and now you see why I answer that question that way. I hope that this gave you something to think about. And I also want to say, you don't have to agree with me, right? There's no harm in you choosing not to do yoga during your period. You have an entire menstrual cycle to come back and practice yoga. It'll be okay if you don't practice it for 3 to 5 days. If what I shared doesn't align with what you think, that's cool too. That's allowed. No harm, no foul. So I'm also going to link to a couple of articles in the description box if you want to take a deeper dive into this topic and into this idea. I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but that's where I stand. So now you know. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be well, and bye for now.